Hello and welcome to GamesRadar's video review of The Order 1886. I'm GamesRadar Executive Editor Andy Hartup, and I'm here with Dave Houghton, who has reviewed the game.
Hello.
So, Dave.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of like a clever pun, but I guess I'm just going to ask you, tell us a little bit about The Order. I mean, there's been a lot of speculation about, is it a shooter, is it just a story game, is it like practically a point and click? Like, tell us, what is it?
It doesn't seem to know.
Okay.
And what it does seem to try, it doesn't execute very well. The best way of summing it up to start with, I think, is to say what it seems to want to be. Mm-hmm. In that its basic aspiration, if I'm reading it right, seems to be quite admirable, in that it wants to be like an action war story that doesn't focus primarily on meting out violence.
Okay.
Which is a good thing. I mean, I'm all for that. That's probably the next logical step for action games to go with. We've seen hints of that with the stuff The Last of Us did with, using kind of building a lot of stuff, like ambient stuff around to kind of build world and character. The problem is, it seems to aspire to be that sort of game, but doesn't understand how to really translate the mechanics to make that work in a satisfying, evolving way. Okay. So, in concrete terms, you've got a game which it's a third-person action game, kind of. There's a chunk of it, not much less than you get in like an Uncharted or a Gears, which is some cover shooting stuff, where you're generally fighting human rebels who you're also dealing with, as well as this werewolf threat. That's a relatively small part of the game, though. The rest of it...
What's the rest of it?
You don't do a lot for the rest of it. The rest of it is either... There's a monumental amount of cutscenes on the go. Really pretty, really well directed.
They look amazing, the cutscenes.
Oh, this game overall, I mean, what you see in the cutscene is what you get in-game, pretty much. It's genuinely probably the prettiest game there's ever been on a console so far. It looks insane, incredibly next-gen. But aside from that, you don't really do a lot with it. There's the cutscenes, which take a large bulk of the game's time. And the rest of it is, the kind of the filler bits you do in between the main parts in other games.
Yep. Like
in between an Uncharted or a Gears, say, you'll be doing a lot of walking around, chatting to people on radios, opening doors, pushing obstacles out the way, bit of light climbing and that sort of thing.
Yep.
The rest of it is a game built out of other games' filler, effectively.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, again, focusing away from the combat, no bad thing. I'm completely for that in principle. Mm-hmm. But the problem is you've got to evolve the mechanics of what you do with that to make it satisfying and worthwhile.
Okay.
Say, the way The Walking Dead basically makes an entire game series, and a really good one, out of cutscenes and dialogue trees. But it evolves and adds a lot more weight and depth to that stuff. The Order doesn't. It just gives you what you usually get in other games, but a lot of it.
Okay, well, let's try and dig some positives out of what is clearly a game with a bit of an identity crisis. Tell us about the story. Obviously, don't give too much away, but basically the story, did it keep you entertained for the duration of the game?
Kind of. It's got pacing issues. I mean, it breaks off a bit sooner than it should. It feels like it's missing an act at the end of it. But ultimately,
DLC, question mark?
DLC or sequel.
Okay.
Who knows? Who knows at this stage? But, yeah, I mean, I'd say the telling of the story is better than the actual story itself. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's definitely helped by the visual fidelity of it. The kind of characterization feels quite real because these look at least like very real, believable people. The acting on the main guy, Galahad, is great. He's got, I'd say the writing per character is quite intricate and interesting in terms of little character moments, but the overall sweep of the story is decent but a bit blunt.
Right.
And it makes a mistake of kind of blowing a few of its twists a bit early as well.
Okay. That sounds like a little bit of a shame in a game that basically builds itself around the story. Tell me about the moustaches.
The moustaches are excellent. 10 out of 10 for moustaches, all over that. I mean, and that's the good thing, no matter how bad things are getting, no matter how irritating or non-interactive any particular part might be, you can always spin the camera and look at Galahad's moustache.
So does this set a new benchmark for new-gen moustaches?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, if this even sets up a whole kind of new manifesto for next-gen being built about moustaches, in the way that Gears of War made that entire generation of cover shooters, I'm perfectly happy, as long as this is the standard we work from.
Well, I'm basically sold, but tell me a little bit about the gameplay. Like, how does it play when you actually get control of it?
Yeah, when you do get control of it, the cover shooting is okay. It's functional. It misses some stuff that is pretty much standard for the genre these days. And there's no evasive maneuver, which is really odd for a cover shooter, especially when you've got one particular AI type that delights in rushing you down with shotguns and you've got no way of rolling out of the way. So that stuff becomes a bit futile and infuriating. The colour system's quite nice. It's quite sticky and weighty. Got a bit of a Deus Ex-y kind of heft to it. It's kind of similar to Tomb Raider, isn't it? You can push in and pull out of cover rather than having to hit a button. That's rather good. But the problem really is the AI is quite limited in that there's one type that seems to hunker down behind cover and never leave until you kill it. And there's one type that rushes you down sometimes. And the in-between stage, there's none of that sense of getting in amongst a fight like you would in Uncharted, or any decent cover shooter, really. You're never really inside a big sort of melee of bullets and cover and strategic running around. It always feels a bit like a shooting gallery, and you can tend to just hold one spot.
What about the weapons? Like I played the preview demo, which was the airship level, and the weapons in it seem quite good. They seem quite beefy and quite creative. Yeah,
well, initially they feel great. The one thing it's got going for it is the guns feel fantastic. Really kinetic, really rattly, really kind of like you're dealing with a dangerous machine in your hands, basically. That's good. But in terms of the use in the game, there's not much to pick between them. Over the long term, there are little tweaks. Like you'll get pistols. One's rapid fire. One does more heavy damage. It's more like a Magnum. You've got mid-range rifles. You've got machine guns. But ultimately, a headshot's a headshot's a headshot. Yeah, it's one of those things where kind of functionally, that's all you need to do is aim for the head and take them down, and that's pretty much it. There are some more interesting ones. Like there's a lightning gun, which is the stuff that they've got this storyline where Nikola Tesla's building.
Does it make men explode, or does it just
no?
No.
Again, disappointingly, it's really satisfying that you charge it up, you pop it out of cover, you fire it, but it's just the same as a headshot. You hit them in the chest and they just drop straight down. Doesn't chain, doesn't do anything particularly exciting.
Because I'm still waiting for another game to better the taser from Siphon Filter, which still literally sets people on fire.
The greatest electro weapon in any game ever. No, it doesn't do that. It just drops men the second it hits them.
I feel there's a missed opportunity there. If you were obviously looking to buy the game and it's 50 quid, $60 in the US, is it worth it? I mean, it really doesn't sound worth it.
Not for that price, no. It's infuriating because it's a strange game in that it's objectively completely wrong in so many ways. It doesn't seem to understand what games are in 2015. It's like it looks like the future, but it plays like 15 years ago in terms of how superficial it is in a lot of ways. But the problem is that being so resolutely story-led as well, there's absolutely zero replay value to it at all.
No multiplayer or anything?
No
like
multiplayer,
that? Right.
No co-op, no obvious DLC challenges or anything like that. It's just when it's done, it's done. And I think the other problem is because it rations out its action so much, it never really has time to evolve anything it does to a really satisfying degree. So you wouldn't even go and replay a chapter with a good shooting bit, because by the end of it, it's not really moved on from what it's doing in the beginning.
Tell you what it sounds like to me. It sounds like a 2.5 out of 5.
That, unfortunately, is exactly what it is.
Right, okay. Well, I think it sounds like The Order 1886. A little bit disappointing. Very pretty game. Great for moustache and facial hair aficionados, but not necessarily for people who love games.
No.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
That was a pretty sweet video, right? If you want to see more, go to GamesRadar's YouTube page over here. Or if you want to read, maybe up your game a little bit, go to GamesRadar.com.